Hello, welcome to the Digital Third. This is episode 2, and guys, it's already exceeded my expectations and before it has even started. Why? Because originally I had one guest on lined up for today, and in the last 48 hours, I was able to bring on 2 more guests, and for good reason. They're not just any 3 random guests. I have with me today 3 legends in the Webflow podcasting space. So this episode, who is it for? It is for all the listeners who follow the Great Design Lead podcast, Webflow's very own Overflow podcast, and definitely, last but not least, the Webflow podcast. So if this is for those who are interested in learning or starting a podcast, this episode's for you. We'll be jumping like behind the scenes, getting all the juicy secrets to produce a podcast and all the workflows, all the geeky gear that we're gonna dive into. We're just gonna explore all that. So okay, so quick agenda. We are gonna have a nice coffee chat with the guest, get close and personal, get to know them, and then maybe we'll do a little bit of show and tell, and then we'll follow up with Q&A. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask it in the comments and start with a capital Q, and I could quickly search. So, all right. So grab a coffee or tea, relax. Also, we encourage you to go for a walk and listen to. We'll be putting the recording on the podcast. So anyways, without further ado, please welcome my guest, Emily Giordano, Matthew Munger, and Jack Redley. Woohoo! People are excited. Wow. How is everyone doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so like I shared, this was like a last minute thing. We just kind of invited you guys together. This is really unscripted. I am breaking every rule there is to leading a podcast. So I'm glad that you guys are here to teach me some things. And yeah, it's just an honor to be among the greats. So let's start with just introducing yourselves. Emily, let's start with you. Who are you? Where you're from? What do you do for work? Just a little blurb about your podcast.
Sure. So hi, my name is Emily Giordano. I have a little podcast called the Great Design Lead podcast, and I hang out with web designers, web developers, and product people, and just anybody who likes design stuff. I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Right now I live in Philadelphia. And for work, I work at Zipcar as a UX designer.
Nice.
That's me.
All right, Matthew.
All right. Hey, everyone. Matt, I grew up in Oklahoma City. I've lived in Europe, Africa, and Central America. But recently, I moved back to the Midwest in the USA to be near family, as recently as last week, actually. And currently, I'm an advocate at Webflow on the education and community team, where I serve as kind of customer zero internally, advocating for our customers and community. The podcast I host is produced for the Webflow community, and it's called Overflow. Short form podcast where I interview community members, get to know more about them, and through me, the rest of the community gets to know them better as well. The show launched in early 2023, and I'm excited to be on track to deliver 52 episodes by the end of the year to wrap up season 1. So,
wow, amazing. Jack, Mr. Redley.
Hey everyone. I'm Jack. And I do the Webflow podcast where I ask people about their 3 biggest failures as Webflowers. So I just want to ask people intrusive questions. That's really why I set up the podcast. And I also work for Edgar Allan. So I basically I'm called a marketing coordinator, but I don't really know what that means. I feel like I'm doing a little bit of everything, which is fun. And yeah, I've been doing the podcast for a year. Want to do it for many more years because every week I get to talk to interesting people, and it's just a privilege to do. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And congratulations on your recent rebrand just a few days ago.
You.
Amazing website.
Oh, thanks so much. A labor of love, but I'm glad that it's finally live. So yeah.
I'm going to see if I can pop it up here. Here we are.
That looks
I
great.
love this little flag animation. People were commenting on that. Got scroll animations. It's really nice. So how long did this
Oh,
take you
thanks.
to work on and launch?
Josh, too long.
Too long, yeah.
Too long. We started. I've been kind of unhappy with the brand identity for a long time, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe this is everyone, and maybe we'll get on to talking about this type of thing. But I think right at the start, you kind of try and be a little bit bigger than you are, maybe, and you try and have this like clean cut, like, yeah, we're, big and come on the
Professional.
podcast and stuff. And yeah, and actually, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this today, but it's a very scrappy process where we're trying to work things out kind of in real time, and I think the nature of the podcast as well. I think I started the podcast because I wanted to understand how to do stuff. I don't
Okay.
have the answers. I'm like in the pit trying to work things out as much as everyone. And I think I really wanted the brand identity to reflect that a lot more than it has. I think in the past it's been a bit like clean and I don't know. And and I thought it was me, but I think the more I've done the podcast, the more I've realized kind of what my role is and like who I am. Sorry, this is going to Zen, but yeah, I guess I wanted a brand identity that was scrappier, that was more reflective of who I saw myself and who listeners maybe did as well. And yeah, so that's kind of why the brand identity started. And then you get into this can of worms when you start doing a brand identity because you're like, oh, and then we got to change this and copy
Yeah.
and imagery. And so, yeah, it took kind of a couple of months to do everything, but
Yeah.
happy with the result. So that's good.
Well, we love it. It's awesome. And I think you did a good job.
Congrats.
So yes.
But I would say to these guys they're on the left of my screen. I don't know where they are on everyone else's screen, but yeah, it's awesome to be kind of part of an ecosystem that's bigger than just me. Like, I think it's really cool that we're all, having interesting conversations every week, and there's so many people being vulnerable in the Webflow space, which I think is very, very different to like any other company's audience in my head. Like, I don't know any other company that's got so many interested people that are helping to like generate content for that company and get to know the individuals that are using that product, which I think's amazing. So just to say that massively inspired by you guys as well. So
Same.
appreciate everyone.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I kind of speaking to that kind of the ecosystem that kind of our podcast play with each other. I thought, what if our podcasts were on somebody's calendar? What would it look like? And so here's what I came up with. So to start off the day, someone has Overflow, a coffee chat with Matthew. Then they have Webflail. They have a business lunch with Jack. Then in the afternoon, the great design leads on their calendar with afternoon therapy with Emily. And then after work, you have the digital third, happy hour with Josh. It's like the complete package right there.
I like it.
What a team.
Yeah. In fact, that is actually kind of how, like, it's weird you should say that, because that is kind of like, Overflow I kind of see as like my breakfast coffee podcast. That's my like morning thing.
It's a starter.
And then I only ever listen to Emily's podcast in the afternoon. And then Josh, I feel like this
I don't
maybe
exist.
my evening thing now.
Yeah. Who knows?
Maybe
who knows?
this
This could
as
be the
in,
last
like,
episode.
It's kind of how I, depending on my mood, how you start the day or end the day. It's I like it. It's a cool idea.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to, just to get numbers, I'm just curious, just to get the numbers out of the way. So Matthew, you said that you're planning to get 52 episodes. You are, like 40 in right now? Something like that?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, almost.
Okay. And then Emily, how many have you put in? Because you have been a machine and just interviewing so many people. Yeah.
I just recorded my 121st one yesterday.
121st.
Yeah,
Whoa, that's
Wow.
crazy.
thank you.
And you've been doing it for how many years now?
That's over 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 52, like one a week. So
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah,
Jack, how many? What's your count?
We are on episode, well, 51, I think, is like the
Okay.
official thing, because we did 4 bonus episodes. We tried to like do some we try to review. I'd be intrigued to talk to you guys about this actually,
Yeah.
because I feel like there's so much like new, and you kind of have to push this like new thing to keep people interested. But there's like so many nugs
Mm.
back in the past, and it's kind of like, how do you even understand all these conversations and all the amazing things that people have said, and then put that into a format that like might interest people in going back, but also just like, sorry, Josh, I'm taking your hosting role.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
if he,
This is what I want to see. Like, what do you do when you put 4 top interviewers in the room? And yeah, do they all just like do their thing? It's interesting because obviously you guys are kind of like my guest, and I'm flipping the roles here. So yeah, it's cool. I do want to ask you, Matthew. I think we'll probably get there later on where we're asking about like our home setup and stuff, because I know you always ask about people's studio, and I yeah, so I
Mhm,
definitely want to
mhm.
like ask you that question, because that's something you always ask others. Before we do that, I just want to kind of bring it back to like, why did you guys start? Like, what was the one reason that inspired you to just start a podcast? And then now doing it for so many episodes, has that reason changed? Yeah, so Emily, I'd love to start with you.
Oh, thanks. So I started the podcast back when I was in college, and I was about to graduate, and I was doing graphic design, and I wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do, and I wanted to make a lot of friends with people, and so
Mm,
I actually was doing the podcast before even having a podcast. I would just find people on LinkedIn, and I thought that their backgrounds were interesting, and so I would message them saying, "Hey, do you want to be friends? You want to have a phone call sometime?" And then we would do that, and I just realized that, like, after my 8th hour-long phone call with someone from LinkedIn I thought was cool, I was like, "They're not getting anything out of this. Maybe if I had a podcast, people would wanna hang out
mm,
more, or, like, at least they would get something out of it instead of just giving me all their time." And so that's when I started doing it, just for that, and, like, almost 2 years later, o over 2 years later, I have all these friends all over the world and all these
yeah.
people that I can connect with, and it's been the greatest thing for my career and also like my emotional health.
Hmm. Would you
That's
guys?
it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Matthew, would you do you kind of
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah. So mine's kind of similar. So when I started this advocate role at Webflow, I started doing batches of like customer calls to get to know more people that I didn't already know in the community. I started reaching out, was like, hey, who are like up and coming designers, people that I need to connect with and know about. And as I started doing these batches of calls with people in the community, I realized I wish more people could have this experience because I enjoy getting to learn all about different people in different parts of the world, their culture, their experiences, their life journey, and their professional journey. And I was like, for one, I want to be able to share this more broadly within Webflow, but then
Mm,
within the community, I want more people to get to know each other and find common connection points beyond just I use Webflow, I'm a designer, I'm a developer. It's like there are a lot of like these third places as it's called that
mm,
you have in common with other people, whether it's I play an instrument or I have this hobby or I like traveling, there are a lot of other ways to connect beyond just these kind of initial professional connection points. So I wanted to really hopefully foster more connections, or if it's somebody you already know, maybe you learn something new about them, right? So that combined, and so where the podcast came in is I have production experience in the past
mm.
and producing audio and video productions, and so I was like, well, it just kind of seemed like a natural progression of thought for me kind of after I made that conclusion.
And why audio with podcasting instead of like video?
Yeah. Accessibility. So, because I
Uh,
want to really show off the diverse global community that Webflow has, connection speeds vary greatly from place to place, country
mm,
to country, service to service, and audio is a lot more accessible and it's easier to capture. And since I like to do a really tight edit on audio, I'm very particular.
oh
I
yeah. Your
I
cuts are amazing. You made me sound good because I have a lot of ums and uhs, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
you
we all
just cut it
do.
out. That
Yeah.
was nice.
Yeah. So I want to have that post production like process. Like that's important to me. That's why it's not live. That's why it's produced and edited.
Right. Okay, I'm taking a lot of notes here. Maybe I should do more pre-recorded interviews.
Depends.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Okay, so we heard the origin story of Emily and Matthew with Overflow. Jack, how did you just? Yeah, I think you shared it earlier, right? Like you just wanted to learn from people, right? Was that kind of the main reason?
Yeah, sorry, I went ahead of you on the script there.
All good.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've noticed about Webflow in the space is that the people that seem to be like really thriving in their career have actually taken some big hits and kind of like messed up quite a lot. And I think generally in life, um, I love like entrepreneurship podcasts, and there's one called Indie Bites, and there's one that I listen to. I mean, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but basically, there's a lot of people that have had some big mess ups that have kind of bounced back, and I think this whole idea of like embracing failure and kind of learning from it and then sharing those lessons is something that I found really interesting and really exciting. And yeah, I wanted to ask intrusive questions to Webflowers that I wanted to speak to and learn from. And no one was replying to my emails when I said, hey, I want to ask you intrusive questions. But I found that if I had a podcast, people were like, yeah, here's an hour of my time. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, this is like the biggest cheat code in life.
Yeah.
I actually didn't think anyone was going to listen, though, to be honest. I was like, I just want to have a conversation every week. And if I put a mic in front of me, apparently that's more appealing to talk to me. But then
Right.
people started listening. And I guess that's the mad thing about doing a podcast for, like, if you're quite consistent with it, I think, then, slowly people start caring about what you talk about, which is the craziest thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's kind of become something that's gone from like a hobby to more of a job, which is wild. And now I'm talking to
Yeah.
you guys, which is so crazy.
I think
So
we're
yeah.
all fanboying right here, all over each other. So.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's wild. Like it's so weird to like listen to all you guys and then be like, "Oh, I'm just chatting with you on a live stream." But that's the power of doing a podcast. It's really life changing without trying to be all like woo woo about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just pulling up a comment here from Isabel Edwards. She's like, "Yeah, regarding Matt's editing, like I sound so concise." It's great. Okay. There's so much to cover, and guys, feel free to ask your own questions. Right? Like I'm just trying to guide as much and facilitate. But like, let's. How do you get consistent? What kind of tips that for those who want to start a podcast, what was the thing that you can you can tell them that'll save them a lot of learning and time in terms of being consistent or planning or research or yeah. So Emily, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I noticed that if you try to do a podcast by yourself, it's hard to be consistent because you're like, oh, I'm busy this week or I'm doing this. But when you have a guest and you have something on the calendar,
Mm,
it's happening because that person set aside time for you and you're not going to change plans on them. And so doing that, and then maybe like after, I don't know, 30 episodes or something like that, it just becomes part of your routine and it becomes normal. And sometimes you will plan out your next 4 months or so of episodes. And so it's just on the calendar and you're just showing up and doing that. And also, I manage everything in Notion. I use like the calendar features in Notion.
oh,
So I'll
okay.
have a
Same.
calendar where one date is like when we're recording, and the other date is when it's coming out. And so I can see where I have gaps in my calendar. Like, okay, so in 4 weeks, I have a gap. So I should probably schedule something now so that that gap will be taken care of. Or I'm going on vacation. I should do a whole bunch of episodes now and then schedule them in Anchor or Spotify podcasters. And then I'll be good for when I'm on vacation. So yeah, it's just planning ahead and involving other people so that you're accountable.
Okay, cool. Do you have like a manager or someone to like help you schedule, or it's just kind of you?
I have the Calendly plugin.
Okay, wow, one man army. Love it.
Yeah, I like that. And I also have an editor. So shout
Okay.
out to Gar who edits my episodes. He's great.
Okay, nice. Matthew, how big is your team, or is it just you as well?
Started out as just me. Recently brought in a contract editor. Her name is Mia Miller, and we connected on Contra. So kind of shout out to Contra. And yeah, it's going really well. It's taken, we've taken our time to really, we started off with her doing the transcription services, and then to kind of really find my voice and tone for the editing and what content stays in and what I pull back on. And then, yeah, we've transitioned now to where she's editing the show, and I think it's been pretty seamless. So
nice.
Other than that, yeah, it's just me and a bunch of apps.
Okay, so in terms of scheduling, how far out do you reach out to people?
Yeah. So, like Emily said, it depends on what my calendar looks like and if I know I need to work ahead. Generally, I'm about 5 weeks out from needing to lock down a guest to the episode being released. And I mean, like, I've got actually, this is one of my tips, but I actually have phases for each podcast episode. And because there are so many episodes in the air at one time, it's really important for me to understand which episode is in which phase. And, kind of, even though each task or each phase doesn't take up a whole day or a whole week of my time, I need to understand where each one's at. And so the phases I use are planning, recording, editing, reviewing, staging, and published. And in general, I have about 1 week of time for each of those phases. And that gives me a nice buffer in different places. And this is my second tip, is to put those buffers into your schedule, because you will have vacations, you will have cancellations, you will have technical difficulties, and need to have multiple buffers along kind of the workflow process so that you can make those adjustments. If you only have like one buffer at specific points in the process, then you have points of failure that you can't like adjust for. So,
okay, that is so good. You are very methodical. I love it. And I assume you work in Airtable and you just have everything all automated.
I do. It actually is all in Airtable
Nice.
automations. I actually don't have anything. I had some stuff in like Zapier and Make, but it's all in Airtable now. But yeah, I can talk through a little bit if you want, like for the phases. Yeah, planning. I use Airtable for me, and that's like the bulk of it. It's really the powerhouse. But like without Airtable, like the podcast would, I don't know, it would be a mess. Then I have Asana for actually sharing kind of these high level kind of status information with others in the team and with the contractor. Then for booking, I use MimeStream for email. So I generally will reach out via email and sometimes Twitter if I don't have an email. And then Calendly for booking. And then I use Cron as my calendar.
Wow.
For recording, I use Riverside exclusively. It's amazing. And it has really good redundancy as far as it's recording locally to each individual's machine and then uploading in the cloud separately from your actual video call. So if you have connection issues on any end, it's going to prioritize the local recording, and it's saved me many times now.
That's great.
And the quality is pretty good, hey, on Riverside?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, you can use it for live streaming and for video and stuff as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have Descript as well. Is that right?
Yeah. For editing, I used Descript. So both myself and the editor work collaboratively in Descript. So they'll go through and do the initial edits. I'll come in and do my review, leave comments, and then they'll do the final edit. And then I come in and add the intro and outro.
Nice. Yeah, this is great because it's if for those who are listening, Descript, you have to check it out. It's spelled DESCRIPT.com, and you can basically, it transcribes your audio, and then you can like select a phrase and hit delete, and then it'll just cut it. Or you can type in extra words, which is kind of creepy, and then it synthesizes your voice to read those words. So it like so you can get rid of the ums and uhs and
which to be
nuts.
clear for all my guests, I don't do that.
I don't like what he
insert
said.
words for myself or for them.
Yeah, Jack, what's your process like? And real quick, I
listening
think,
to you
man,
guys.
time's going by so quick. So I want to like try to put in as much information in this hour.
Okay.
So let's go.
Okay,
let's go.
I'll be quick. Very impressed by your amazing processes. My process is more haphazard. I'm very glad that Bill doesn't know. I don't think he knows about the stream. I hope he's not watching because he would destroy me in the chat. But yeah, so I work with Bill, my little brother. Younger brother. Sorry, Bill. He always gets annoyed when I say little brother. He's way taller than me. Anyway, you asked for quick and I'm rambling. We use Notion, we use Descript, we use StreamYard for live streams when there's multiple people because Riverside I've found isn't very good for multiple people, but it is good generally. And we use Riverside if it's just one guest. But for like live streams, when I do live streams like this type of thing with Edgar Allan, we use StreamYard. Basically, we use SavvyCal to book the guests. That automatically sends information. It does loads of automatic emails and stuff that we've set up, which is really, really helpful. And the original question was, how do you stay disciplined? I would not do a podcast if you do not want to have those conversations. Like, if you need to stay disciplined, like if you need to be like, oh man, I need to think of all these hacks to have these conversations and stuff, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. Just don't do a podcast. Because there's way easier ways to make money. There's way easier ways to like
You
have
don't do it for the money,
conversations
for
with
sure.
people. Don't do it for the money. It's way easier to say why you shouldn't do a podcast than why you should.
Yeah.
Don't do a podcast for money. Don't do a podcast to reach loads of people. It's not the best format to do that. Don't do a podcast if you want an easy life. Don't do a podcast if you're not willing to care about the tiny details, because they really matter in podcasting in comparison to other content formats, I would argue. And don't do a podcast if you don't like the sound of your own voice, because you will be listening to it a lot. So yeah, those are my quick takes.
Okay.
Why should you do a podcast is another question, but I'd say it's way easier to say why you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Now
That's
a
my
lot of
take.
people who thought they were going to start a podcast aren't going to now, which is good.
Well,
You saved
yeah,
them
I
a
mean,
lot
like,
of.
so many podcasts start and stop. Like, I think most people don't get past 30 podcast episodes. There's some stat that I read, which is like to do 120 episodes is wild, Emily.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd definitely say like this whole question about staying disciplined, like we're talking about all these tools and tips and tricks and whatever, like SavvyCal and Descript and whatever, all cool and all important, and it's worth talking about them. But like those come way after, and frankly, you're going to be a mess from episodes, or I'd say episode 1 to 50. Like it takes ages to get this type of like depth of knowledge from experience, from all the mess ups that you have between episodes 1 and 50, maybe more. I'm on episode 55 and I'm still messing up the whole time, even with all these tools and even with all this knowledge of experience. So how do you stay disciplined? Well, just ask yourself, do you need to stay disciplined? Like, do you need to have some kind of, hack to even ask people to have these conversations? Like, if you don't want to have these conversations with these interesting people, or if you don't consider these people that interesting, but you're like, oh, I've got to have a call with da-da-da, and I'm not that psyched for it. I think it's worth asking the question, like, is this the right thing to do? And it's okay if it's not, because frankly, podcasts are really, really hard. I don't know about you guys, but like, if you're not psyched to have these conversations from the get-go, like if you aren't psyched to do that, then just don't. That's my opinion. Sorry, I'll stop talking now.
No, that was good. That was good.
I would say I did the thing that I would advise people interested in podcasting not to do, which is have a weekly podcast. It's like it's intense to have a weekly podcast, no matter the length of the episodes. And, for me, the drive was I want to highlight as many people as possible. It's like, so to me, it felt like the minimum is like I need to do weekly, whatever helps with the, getting you highlighted, right, in the different apps, distribution apps and such. But outside of that, I would recommend start monthly, start bi-weekly. You can always speed up, but it's a lot harder to slow down and not just like lose complete momentum and just go for a tailspin.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
also
start where you're comfortable and grow.
Yeah. So also having an editor eventually helps a lot.
Yeah.
Helps so much. So like I do 2 episodes a week, and then I could take a month off, and then I don't have this burnout or anything like that.
Yeah. So you know what I'm gonna do? After this is done, I'm literally just gonna chop it and upload. I'm gonna upload it raw. So I hope this comes off well. But that's how I roll. I don't know anything. That's why I'm learning from you guys. Okay, Isabel asks, this is a really good question. How important do you think it is to find your niche in the podcast world? And it's interesting because each of you have niche down. Like Jack Redley, you are all about people just sharing like their failures. And I love that. I love like you talk, they share their story of resiliency, how they got back up, what lessons they learned. And Matthew with Overflow, it's so well produced, and it's like bite size of like their whole life into 15 minutes. And that was like, I don't know how you do it, but it's really great. And then Emily, you just pull all the essence from their soul and like bring it out in audio format. It's amazing. And I really enjoyed being on your podcast. So yeah, those are definitely some amazing niches that you guys have. But like, do you think, is that really important to have a niche, or do you just start with whatever and then niche down from there? What do you think?
Can I jump in? Because I was last to enter this market, if you will, of Webflow podcast out of us here, out of the three of us. And so, I love what both of them do. It's very unique and very impactful. And I'd been listeners, of The Great Design Lead and Webflow, from the beginning, listened to every episode. And I was like, when this idea came up, I was like, I want to make sure it's different and is separated and has a purpose that fits in between, like in the landscape of both of them, because Emily is really great at understanding the journey of someone to that point in their life, their history and what makes them who they are today. And then Jack is really good at bringing out these insights from and learning so that you can follow along with somebody's kind of professional journey and learn from their journey and their mistakes, and it's invaluable. And so when I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to surface these conversations, but what is different? I was like, well, I want to capture them in the moment of who they are just today, and just make that as kind of a starting point so that people can go further and get to know people. So that's it.
I love that. It's like you're focusing on the time horizons of people's lives.
Yeah. So I'll say that Emily and Jack were very much an inspiration and a guidance for how I should kind of shape Overflow to fit within and not be competitive, but be complementary.
That's so kind. Thank you.
Yeah,
Aw.
that's I don't think I've heard you say that. So that's interesting to hear how you
No, I mean, I'm saying things that I probably, never told anyone. Yeah, it's just the thought process that go into my head. Yeah.
Yeah, the nicest things that are said about you usually are when you're not in the room. So that's probably one of them.
So the key takeaway is leave the room.
Leave a microphone.
bug the room. No.
But for my niche, I don't know. It just was what felt natural. One of the first podcasts I ever listened to was an audio only podcast where it was the Design Matters podcast, and so I really loved that I could learn about all these different people, and it was the first time in my life, I think when I was like 13 or so, where I got to know somebody without knowing what they looked like. And so I thought that that was so special to like, get to know somebody for who they are, their childhood, and then hearing their voice, you try to like picture what they look like, or you try to picture who this person is. And then after every episode, I would Google them. I'm like, I was completely off. And so it's something that's like really interesting of, and that's also why all the thumbnails are baby photos or kid photos under the age of 10, is because it's like that's who that person is. Like this is how they started. They haven't always been where they are now. And that's a little bit of kind of like what Jack does too, with saying like, hey, you think that this person is like all rainbows and like has always been successful and has always been who they are now, but that's so not the case. Like here are 3 instances where like things really went wrong and this is how they fixed it. Like I shared some of my own things with him, and I just hope people that gives people a little bit more perspective. So yeah, between Jack and I think that both of us really focus on perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack,
Sorry,
you have
do you want
something
me?
to say?
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to say that this whole I think this idea of niching is a topic that really comes up in like as a webflower as well. And I'm really interested in this idea of the kind of looking at a lot of people will look at like the marketplace and kind of judge where they fit in the marketplace. And I think that's really, really valuable. But I also think what's maybe more valuable is just like to work out what you are like the essence of what you're interested in is. I always listen to podcasts like the Founders Podcast, How I Built This, Indie Bites. Like I'm interested in how people bounce back from failure, and that's where I like naturally the podcast that I listen to, and I wanted to kind of do that within the Webflow space. So I think Matthew and Emily are saying this maybe slightly differently, but I think it's all kind of the same. It's like working out who you are and what you're about, and that's naturally going to be like your happiness leverage, right? Like you're going to be wanting to have those conversations because that's what you want to listen to. That's the type of thing that you want to make because you're already in that ecosystem and that you're like that frame of mind, and that's what like really lights your fire. And then you're like, okay, cool, this is me. Where would that fit into the rest of the marketplace? Like how can I then turn this idea into a format that actually works for the podcasting medium? So like I think 3 is a really nice number because I can spend the first 20 minutes of the podcast doing kind of background, what's your career? Then we do 10 minutes per failure. Then we've got 10 minutes for kind of final chat about like, what's your next failure going to be? So I'm thinking like, okay, essence of me, that's me. Where does that fit into the landscape? Well, it kind of does fit in, I think, because I don't see anyone else in the Webflow landscape doing this. And then how does that turn into actual structure for the podcast? That's kind of how I think you should approach this, rather than being like, where does the market, like, where's there a gap in the market? Yeah, there's a gap in the market, cool, but like, what really lights you up? I think starting there is for me an important thing to think about.
Okay, I want to dive into like really the nuance, the nitty gritty of interviewing, the art of interviewing. How do you prepare yourself? Do you have a script? Is that or a structure? Do you follow it? And do you give specific questions, or do you kind of improvise. I know Emily. I think you just like start and go from there. I love that. So I want to start with you because like even your research, how do you prepare and how do you engage with the people? Because I love what you said about sometimes you get to know a person just through their voice, and like that is beautiful because that's like their true personality, their true essence. So yeah, tell me more about that. How do you prep?
Um, so it's not crazy, I promise. It's only like for like 72 or 48 hours. But I aggressively research people, and I will go through your entire Instagram feed. I'll go through every photo you've ever been tagged in. I'll go through your mom's Facebook. I'll go through your Twitter. I'm going to listen to every podcast that you've ever been. I'm going to find your
Oh, that is
Spotify
so scary.
and
I will
listen
find
to
you.
the playlists that you have that are like that you're like, oh, this is what I listen to at work. I'll listen to that the whole playlist. Like I don't know, if you wrote a book, I'll find the preview and read it. I don't know, like I'll find your jump school photos and check those
Mhm.
out. Like anything that I can find to understand who you are, and then I will just put all of that into a Notion document. And you're gonna think I'm a crazy person, but it only lasts for like 72 hours, and then I let it go. But it's just, and also like I think a big thing with researching somebody is you have to be totally fine with the fact that you might only use 10% of that research.
Mm.
Um, and the conversation that you're going to have, like you can't interrupt somebody just to impress them saying like, I know this about you. Like if it's just naturally they're going to bring it up, you can't interrupt me like, oh, I know that. Or like, I don't
Uh-huh.
know, yeah, I knew that you worked at Burger King when you were 15. Like
So why do you do that copious amount of research, Emily?
Mm.
it makes people
I
feel
have a
so
theory.
cared for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I feel like for your interview process, you need to be able to have this deep empathy for the person in order to get those authentic responses out of them. And so I think a lot of that research process sounds to me like it's a lot for you to be able to put yourself in their shoes and have that kind of baseline understanding so that you can go deep with them. Because if you're starting at the ground floor with your understanding of them, kind of more like what I do, you can't go to those deep levels and kind of
Mm.
get to those emotional like levels, deep within someone's humanity. So that's what I
Oh,
see. Mhm.
thank you. And sometimes I end up sending people the Notion document that I have on them afterwards. And I sent one to Jack because we were interviewing the same person, and he's like, "Oh, fuck, what's wrong with you?"
We were like, we have such a different process. I was scared. I was like, how do you know this guy's bank details, Emily?
No, no, no,
Um,
no.
she didn't do that just in case. But I was like, what the hell? I don't need to know his high school. I don't. But again, that's to say though that the format of
Yeah.
your podcast and like your personality, like I think if anyone's listening to this live stream thinking, I want to start a podcast, how do I do it? And then with all three of us, we're going to have completely different answers about every single one of Josh's
Mhm.
questions. And I think you need to work out what is best for you, your interview style. Like
Yep.
your guest and the format of your podcast will completely, differentiate how you prepare for an interview as well. So, like, just to say that it's not to say that Emily's process weirds me out, but other podcasters are probably like, yeah, I do the same thing. And like, this is what you should be doing. So,
You know what?
but
I
just to
feel
say,
like
like, it's cool, Emily.
Emily has like
Thanks.
I
all
respect
the
you.
blackmail material on every guest that she has. So whatever you do not piss her off. You want
Mhm.
She
you,
will
you want her on your
destroy
side.
you. Trust me.
Every,
I've seen
everything
the
that I can
depths.
find is publicly available, so
Yeah.
there's nothing.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could be like in a detective. I think there is
You could sell your research
there's a
notes to
detective.
people.
Yeah, there's a detective agency called Bellingcat. Do you guys know about this? Bellingcat is basically like
Oh.
a detective. It's an internet detective group that work with the police
Oh wow.
like all around the world, and they're basically like this internet group that will have like eyes on the ground, and then they upload stuff to it's
Maybe
wild. Look
Emily
up
already works
Bellingcat,
for
but
them.
you are like
We don't know.
she's like Nardwar for the Webflow space. If you guys know
I
Nardwar,
love that guy. He's my inspiration.
yeah.
Okay,
But it's so
okay.
different depending on the
Sorry.
podcast as well. Like, that's the key thing that I think is important as well. Like how you prepare, it depends on you and your podcast and your style. And
Exactly.
you've got to find out what works for you.
Awesome. Okay, this
Yeah.
is Q&A. This is Q&A session. We have some questions from the audience, and then I'd love for you to ask each other questions as well. Okay, Isaac, Megan, what's your favorite, or what's everyone's dream guest? If unless you've
Ooh.
already interviewed them.
Yeah, somebody else can go first. I keep on going
Okay.
first.
Who asked that question?
Isaac.
You are Isaac.
Ooh, there you go. There you go. Isaac, you're up next on Overflow. Okay, Jack, what about you?
I'd love to get Vlad on the pod. I know Emily's already ticked that one off. I mean, like, to be honest, I'm so excited. I'm interviewing Mael Rafini from Tambien Studios tomorrow.
Wow.
And he's like the quiet secret source of Tambien Studios, I feel. And I'm super excited to dig in, like just ask him loads of questions. Honestly, I don't have like one guest that I'm excited about. I have a huge Notion doc of like all the people that I want to interview. But to be honest,
Is
I'm
this it?
psyched. Yeah, this is
Tambien
Tambien Studios. So he
Ooh.
is like the GSAP god.
Whoa.
Yeah. He's like, so I've met I've met the Tambien Studio team because they did an event in Barcelona that I went to, and they're an awesome. There's three of them, and they're all amazing people. But Mael he's just a genius. Look up the Tambien Studio YouTube channel if you want to see him in action. He's like this understated Frenchman he's just like wise. He'll take a few seconds before responding to questions because he's just, he's thinking about all these different answers and then he chooses the right one and everything he says is like on the money. Anyway, why am I banging on about this guy so much? My point is that every single interview, I'm psyched.
Oh, this dude.
So,
I've
yes.
seen it before. Yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of
But
videos.
Jack, that's a
for
good
Tambien.
point. One of my things about interviewing that I think you need to be good at is listening and then asking questions. Those, like, to be a great interviewer, I think those are the two like key ingredients. Listen with intention and then ask relevant questions based on your listening.
Yeah. How to be a good interviewer, I think, is something that I will constantly be asking myself until I die. Because I don't think that the more people, like the more great interviewers or people that I consider great interviewers, the more I listen to them, the more I like learn little things that they do or try them out in the interviews that I do. And then I'm like, it doesn't quite work for me or whatever. And it's just this constant process. But yeah, fascinating question. What makes a good interviewer? I don't know.
Okay. Emily, what's your dream guest?
So like
you've captured so many.
my mentality is it should always be like your next person because that's who I need to be obsessed with for the next 72 hours. But there's one person in particular that I think would be really wonderful to have a conversation with, and her name is Christine Chun, and she has this YouTube channel called Chun Buns. She used to work at Instacart as a product designer, and so I actually found user experience design and even started with web. Yeah, this is my girl, and she's amazing. And it was actually her videos that I was watching on my exercise bike in my senior year of college, and like just her willingness to be so open and with everything when it comes to like the workload, how you get into it, the fact that she didn't go to school for user experience design, details on finances, like what's realistic to expect, all this kind of stuff. Huge inspiration, especially as like as a fellow girl, and I don't know, it's just
That's awesome.
I love her, and if I could ever go talk to her, that'd be awesome.
All right, those listening, just mention her and get her on the great design lead. That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, more questions. Okay, this is a great one by Nelson. What is like the most awkward moments that you've had on the podcast that you can't like you've tried to like edit it or cut it? Was there like a really awkward awkward one?
So
Maybe you can't
many.
even
Every
share now, but
episode.
I implore you, put it out on this live stream.
Losing
Someone
connection.
farted.
Oh,
What's that?
Losing connection is like me. I didn't even think that's awkward anymore because it's like every time. Someone farted, which was really funny.
That's awesome.
Someone ordered a pizza, and the pizza arrived during the interview, and I was just sat there while they were like talking to the pizza delivery person. I was like, okay, good that you're so relaxed in the interview, but you know, it'd be kind of good if you were like here. Oh man, I interviewed someone in there. Like suddenly the whole thing went black, the screen, but they were still there, and the generator had just turned off. But it was still on the call, so they were just like, "Can we just carry on with the interview? I'm sure lights will turn back on quite soon." But it was just pitch black, and we were just carrying on the interview like this was normal. There's so much weird stuff. You guys talk. There must be so many weird things.
What I find most awkward is actually when I'm responding to a guest and trying to validate what they've said and mirror back to them, like their response. And I end up going on like some trail of my own thought or end up talking about myself or my own experience. And I'm like, oh man, I just shifted it to the conversation to a place it didn't need to go, just because I overshared when I lost focus on my guest, really. So that's when I feel most awkward. I mean, yeah, lots of technical difficulties, issues, but yeah, for me, that's what stands out.
I don't have a lot of like I do a lot of research, but I don't have questions prepared ahead of time.
Right.
And so, and my episodes are 2 hours long, and so sometimes I just stand there and stare at the person. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was so like focused on what you were saying. I wasn't like half thinking about what I was going to say next. So can you just like give me a moment just to think about what I'm going to say? And usually people don't care. I'm like, I'll edit this out. It'll be totally fine. I just lost my train of thought. And like, okay, can I go grab a water? Like nobody cares. So like a lot of
That's
people are
great.
stressed about that, but like people, because a lot of other people are nervous to like do an episode with you, and the fact that you're not like taking yourself too seriously and you're just saying, hey, I just need a second, they don't care.
What I love about your podcast is you make people feel so at ease and genuine and just relax that they're almost not aware that lots of people are going to be listening to it, but it's just between you and the guest. And I think that's beautiful, because at the end of the day, it's it's just human interaction, and you can be awkward, you can do this and that, and that's all fine. And I think it just kind of just makes us all relatable, which is awesome.
You are relatable. Everybody, I don't know, everybody's like, what am I going to talk about for 2 hours? This is ridiculous. Can I come for one? I'm like, just trust me. It's going to be okay. I'll hold your hand through this. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
I think
therapy.
that's a challenge too. Like sometimes, okay, well, Matthew, a quick question for you, because you do like short form, and so you're trying to really extract good gold nuggets from them in such a short amount of time. And I know even like when you try to in production for video, when you're trying to interview people and like they get nervous, how do you like make them feel comfortable and relaxed? Because that's a skill. And then how do you like have this conversation that it's like really authentic, as opposed to, oh, I have to like answer these questions and they're on the spot and they have to perform.
Okay. I've got a list of things that I wrote down, so I'm going to go through it really quickly just so I can get it in.
We got like 5 minutes left, so
yeah. So when I think about scripting and sequencing, just because of my production background, I've interviewed hundreds of people, anywhere from one person at a time to whole families at a time, and these are kind of the key things that have stuck in my mind over the years. When they arrive on set, give them your full attention and create a personal connection with them as soon as you can. So you need to have all technical things done and put away by the time they arrive. Walk them through the process, give them the opportunities to ask clarifying questions, and continue to make them comfortable each step along the process. Order the questions and topics to ease them into the harder or more personal questions. So that is how I do it for Overflow. We start very simple with more things that are just kind of facts about yourself. And then we kind of get into the more kind of personal or sharing questions later on. Also for Overflow, the questions are the same from episode to episode. And the reason is I want to be able to draw a string through the episodes through a whole season and extract insights and like, for this question, here's how these people answered, and these people answered. So we're able to really kind of see that kind of through line kind of retrospectively. Prepare follow-up questions to guide them deeper or to approach a topic from a different angle. So if they're not quite offering up kind of authentic answers to a question, oftentimes just restating the question from a different angle can kind of help them understand what you're trying to get from them or to open up further. Mirror their answers as you have understood them. That gives them a chance to correct or clarify what they said. And it also helps your guests to feel validated that you are truly listening, right? Late in the conversation, refer to things that they said earlier in the conversation. Again, proves that you're listening and that you care. Stick with them after it's over. So as soon as you're done recording, don't say, ciao, see you later. It's like, stay on kind of, you need time because kind of stress, anxiety, and everything is higher. You need to actually have a decompression period. So actually do that with your guest. That's quick hits there. So.
That was knowledge bomb drop right there. That was so good.
Yeah, that was great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, relate to a lot of that. I think that being prepared ahead of time, making people feel welcome, and also that little bit of time afterwards that's not recorded, that also goes a long way.
Yeah.
I would assume we're going to be chatting after this live stream goes. It's like, no, sorry guys, I gotta go.
We had that before.
Matthew, I gotta squeeze in this question because before it's too late. Okay, so you always ask like, what is your work environment like? First off, I want to ask, why do you ask that question? And then if you can answer your current space and your environment.
Well, everybody has to work from somewhere, so we all have that in common. And there's a Twitter account that I've followed for a while called workspaces.xyz,
yes.
I believe.
Yes.
And so I like patterns there with designers posting and people enjoying that. So I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice kind of opening, one of the opener questions to really kind of open up and kind of start to reveal a little bit of those personal details that may be around them and might have stories that can lead us further.
Okay. And could you describe your workspace?
Pretty simple. Have a MacBook Pro M series. I use a monitor. It's an LG. And then I have physical products around me. So I have this Sidekick notepad, which is the size of a keyboard.
Nice.
And it sits in front of your keyboard for work. I have the analog productivity system. Nice. I use Studio Neat pens. Very nice. I have some special editions. Yeah, I have a Keychron K11 Pro keyboard I just got with an Alice layout. So nice split layout. I just tried that. And a Keychron mouse.
Cool.
Elgato Light, Blackmagic camera.
Blackmagic. Whew.
Yeah, that's from my days when I used to film. So an old personal camera. I'm like, yeah, I got this around. I should use it.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Any final words? Man, an hour blew by so quick.
This is why Emily does too, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough.
You just start to know people. I think I was trying to think about if there's one thing that I wanted to share about podcasting while we were chatting. And the one thing is a lot of people think, well, I'm not, I don't have my own company, or what could possibly be interesting about me, or anything like that. And any recommendation that I have for a person that's starting out in their career, or starting out in a new career or something like that, having a community of friends that do what you do, or do things in adjacent places to what you do, is that's your safety blanket in your career. And even as an individual contributor, having a podcast and making friends on a regular basis, like talking to somebody new, or like reconnecting with somebody you did a podcast with a year ago, it's been the single greatest decision that I ever made career wise. Both
Mhm.
of the jobs that I had after graduation were from podcast recommendations. Like people that knew me found me that way. And also, it's a very unique thing when you're interviewing for a job that shows that you genuinely care, and you don't genuinely want to be there, and you have passion for what you do. And it really sets you apart. And a lot of companies now are really hiring based on personality, and
Mm.
that you actually like their product, and you actually are passionate about this type of job. So some people, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to be a big company. You don't have to have all these sponsors or anything like that, but just like doing this on your own as an individual contributor, or even as like a manager at a company,
Mm.
it can only help you. And if you're going to
That's
do it,
true.
it's going to be hard, but like, it's so worth it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's
That's
it.
great. All right. Any other final words, Matthew, Jack?
Uh, doing a podcast is the biggest cheat code that no one ever talks about in life. You will meet so many interesting people. You will get offered jobs. You'll get offered money. It's wild. So if you are half interested in starting a podcast, do it. Do not do it for money or
Yeah.
for opportunity. Like I'd like, just to clarify, if you're like, I'm going to earn loads of money doing a podcast, you're not. Let me just cut that dream right now. You're not. Unless you guys are minted, I'm not. No. You guys getting millions? Okay, I've missed something then. But like, it's the biggest cheat code to life. You could, it's mental. If you're like, I want to do a podcast, just know it's going to be so hard. You're going to want to give up loads, but it's so fulfilling, and there's crazy things around the corner if you are willing to love what you do enough to care about the small details. That's me.
What a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
That's
Matthew, any
sweet.
final words
Thank you.
there?
No, that's what Jack said. It's great. It's like, don't get it for the money. You have to really want to do it, and believe that you have something to kind of add your voice to the world.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, there you go. Final words from Emily, Matthew, and Jack. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge. I hope everyone got a lot of value out of this, and I expect to see a lot more podcasts coming down the road. So, with that, guys, we'll see you guys next time. We are live streaming every Tuesdays and Thursdays. And our next guest will be Anna Fine. And we're going to talk about more design and the science of design. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.